Hi, and welcome to this session on user interface configuration for the A to Z list. My name is Carrie Bartels, and I'm a trainer in Ex Libris North America. First, we'll take a tour of the A to Z lists. There's an A to Z list for e-journals and an A to Z list for ebooks, so we'll take a look at how each of them looks and works. Then we'll take a look at the customization, or in other words, the configuration options for the A to Z lists. Also, don't feel like you have to make decisions about each and every one of these options that I talk about. Keep in mind that in SFX, we already have defaults that are set, and generally speaking, you may not change a lot of them. Keep in mind that I'm just showing you all of the possibilities, and in doing so, educating you just a little bit more about how the A to Z list user interface works. So after this presentation, you'll know what customization options are available for the A to Z lists, and some general best practices for user interface customization. So let's start with how the A to Z lists look and work. We're going to look first at the A to Z list for e-journal titles. By default, your A to Z list can be accessed by entering your SFX base URL, and this will be provided to you by your Ex Libris project team, along with a /AZ at the end of the URL. And again, note that this is the URL to access your A to Z list of e-journal titles. At this point, let's go to the A to Z list e-journal titles area live. Now, when we first come to the A to Z list for e-journals, we'll see at the very top of the screen a header image. By default, we have the Ex Libris logo, but you can replace this with your institution's own logo. You'll notice that on the right, there's a drop-down menu of languages. The main portion of the screen, you'll see 4 tabs across the top here, and I'll take you through each of these. But by default, you'll be taken to the Title tab. And this is where you can browse or search for e-journals by title. So you can enter the title name, select starts with or contains for the search type. Also notice that you can use the letters across the top here and select a letter that titles would begin with. In this case, I've just done performed an open search using the asterisk in the title field, and that will allow me to see all of the titles in the list. Scrolling down so we can see the actual titles here. The search results that you see here default to a brief view, which is called the table view. And this is where I can see just some brief information, the name of the journal, the ISSN, and then in the actions column, 2 icons, the information icon and the SFX swirly icon. Now by clicking on the SFX swirly icon, and I'll do this for 21st century music, so I'll go ahead and click on the SFX icon there. That will open up a new tab for me in my browser, and it will show me the SFX menu with any active targets and target services that contain this particular title. So I'll go ahead and close this up. And we'll go back to our A to Z list. If I click on the information icon, and again we'll do this for 21st century music, I'll click on the information icon here. I'll get a pop-up window with additional details about the title, including whether or not it's peer-reviewed. I will also see, as I scroll down here, the availability information, as in which target do I have activated in SFX that this title is available in. And notice also I have threshold information, or in other words, date coverage information for this title. And then lastly, we'll see category information. So we'll see the category, in this case arts and humanities, and a subcategory, literature in this case, that the title is assigned to in SFX by default. And then lastly, we'll see any related object information, so titles that are continued by another title, absorbed by another title, and so on. All of this information that you see here is coming from SFX. I'll go ahead and close up the information box. Speaking of related objects or related titles, if you look in my list of titles, you'll see that some titles are hyperlinked, as in the case of 19th century music, while other titles are not hyperlinked. The hyperlinked titles are titles that you subscribe to and are activated in SFX. The non-hyperlinked titles are related to titles that you have activated. So you don't necessarily subscribe to them, you don't have them activated in SFX, but they're related to a title that you do have activated. And there are options that we'll talk about in just a little bit to remove related titles. If I click on the Switch to Detail View link, and I see that here in the, towards the top, I'm going to see the same list, same results list, but with more details. So I'll click on Switch to Detail View. So we see the same information that we saw in the brief or table view, but we now also see immediately the services that are available. If I scroll down here, we'll look at 19th century music. So we see the services that are available as well as the targets that the title resides in. We see threshold, in other words, coverage information here right away. And we also see category and subcategory information that the object is assigned to. One more thing I'll mention from this screen, and that's the pagination links that you see here. So by default, of course, I'm taken to the first page. Here's the link to the second page, third page, fourth page, and fifth page. If I click on Next Set of Titles, I'll go to the next 5 pages, and that will allow me to navigate through those next 5 pages. There are some customization options around pagination links, so that's why I'm showing that to you now. The next tab we'll take a look at is the Category tab. The Category tab allows you to browse e-journals by category. Now this category information is included in the SFX knowledge base. Each title or object in the SFX knowledge base is assigned to at least one category and subcategory by default. So if I select a specific category, I'll say Arts and Humanities here, we then see the list of subcategories available. Notice the number in parentheses for each subcategory. That indicates the number of titles within the subcategory. So by selecting a subcategory, and I can actually do a multi-select by pressing the Control button and selecting other subcategories here. In this case, I'm just going to select one, Current Events and News. So when I select that subcategory, I'll go ahead and click on the Go button. I will see a list of journals that meet that criteria. In other words, the list of journals that reside in that subcategory, and there are 324 e-journals. Notice also that I have the same display options in the search results here as I did in the Title tab. So I'm actually looking at the Detail view because I clicked on Detail view in the Title tab. It held on to that when I went to the Category tab, but I do have the option to switch to the Table view here. The third tab we'll look at is the Locate tab. This is where the user can conduct more advanced searches by entering any combination of title keywords, for example. Notice we have the Starts With, Contains, and Exact options here. ISSN, they can include a specific vendor and or categories. Now for this example, I'm going to say I want a list of Arts and Humanities e-journals from a specific vendor. We will say EBSCOhost, and I'll click on the Go button. And if I scroll down here, notice that there are 3,218 e-journals that meet that criteria. And again, the display options that we see here for the results are the same as we saw in the Title and the Category tabs. Lastly, we will take a look at, if I scroll up here, the Citation Linker tab. Using Citation Linker, a user with a citation in hand can search for that article using SFX. Essentially, the user is manually creating an open URL that is then sent to the SFX server. So for this example, I'm going to search for an article, and I enter as much or as little information as I have for the citation. So in this case, I do have the article, Dark Matter Halos from the Inside Out. And that is in the journal Advances in Astronomy. And notice I have the Starts With, Contains, and Exact options here. I do happen to have the ISSN for this, so I will enter that now, assuming I typed this in correctly, 7969. And then if I have the date, I can indicate that, or I can select it from the drop-down. So I happen to know this is from 2011. I don't know, however, the month or the day. So I'm just selecting the year. If I had the volume, the issue, the start page, the end page, I can enter that information as well. I do happen to have the author's last name and his first name. Notice also if I have a PubMed ID, I can use that to search, as well as a DOI. If I have that information, I can plug that into the DOI field. So at this point, I'll click on the Go button. When I click on Go, I get the SFX menu that provides links to, in this case, the full text of the article. So I can actually access the full text from here. I'll go ahead and click out of this new window, and we're back at our A to Z list. So these 4 tabs make up the standard A to Z list that the user sees. Now let's go back to the slides for a moment here. In addition to the standard A to Z list, the SFX A to Z list browser toolbar, as you see here in this example, is available as an add-on component for the Internet Explorer browser only. It provides your end users to quickly, or allows your end users to quickly search the SFX A to Z list from anywhere on the web, because that browser toolbar will always be there. Also, it's possible to generate the HTML for an embedded search box to allow users to do a quick search of the A to Z list from anywhere on your library's website. Now, in addition to the eJournals A to Z list, there's also a separate A to Z list for ebooks. Keep in mind that they are separate search interfaces. Now, the default URL for the ebook A to Z list is your SFX base URL, and again, this will be provided to you by your XLibris project team, along with a /azbook at the end of the URL, and that will take you to your ebook page. Let's go ahead and take a look at that live. So I have a tab here where I have Find eBook. So this is my ebook A to Z list. Notice I have my SFX base URL here, and I've added on to the end of the URL a /azbook. The ebook search options are similar to the A to Z list options. However, we don't see as many tabs, obviously. We only have one search interface here. And ebooks do not have categories and subcategories assigned. So you won't see any category options in the ebook search. The results display will also be very similar to the A to Z list eJournal options that we just saw. So in this case, let's say, notice we have a starts with and contains options here for the title. I'm going to start typing in the title of an ebook. And notice when I start typing in the title, I'm presented with some suggestions. And there's a way to decide whether you want that turned on or off, depending on how you or your users are what they prefer. So in this case, though, I'm just going to search for just the word academic in the title. If I have the ISBN, I can indicate that, author's last name, first name, and then you can also select a vendor as well. And because this is a training instance, I don't have that information populated here. So I'll go ahead and click the Go button. And let me just scroll down the screen here so you can see these options. The number of ebooks that it came up with are 8, starting with the word academic. And the search options, again, or display options for the results are very similar to what we saw in the A to Z eJournal list. So right now we're looking at a detailed view. We see the service information, and we also see the target that this particular title is available in. We also have the information button and the SFX swirly icon to generate the SFX menu. Also notice that you can decide whether you want thumbnails of the book cover in the detailed view. If I switch to table view, that will just give me that brief view. Again, very similar to what we saw earlier in the A to Z eJournal list. Going back to the slides. Lastly, I'll mention that there's a mobile user interface for the A to Z lists and citation linker, as well as the SFX menu also. Now, just to be clear, this is not an app, but a mobile interface. So all a user would need to do is type in or access the URL on their mobile device to access the mobile interface screens. It's also possible to customize the banner that displays here in the mobile interface, so to make it your own institution logo, for example. So let's talk next about what kinds of customizations are available for the A to Z lists. Now, in these examples that I'm going to be showing you, I've tried to indicate the defaults, so you can decide if you want to stay with the default or make any changes. Keep in mind that if you're in the process of SFX implementation, you'll want to work with your XLibris project team for any customization changes. If you are already live with SFX, log a support case in with the XLibris support team who will make these changes on your behalf. And that's because TotalCare customers, or for TotalCare customers, XLibris will make these changes for you. Now you also may want to review your Ex Libris SFX contract for information on what kinds of changes can be made and how often changes can be requested. So the first customization we'll take a look at is the Journal's Quick Search box. And as mentioned previously, the Journal's Quick Search is the embedded search box that you can add into your library web pages. Note that, as we see in this example, the title of the search box is Journal's Quick Search, but we have another example here, eJournals Quick Search. So the title of the search box can be customized along with whether you want to use radio buttons, as you see here in this example, or a drop-down for search options, starts with, contains, or exact. Now once you have a configuration that you're happy with, the Ex Libris team can send you the HTML code, and then you can plug that code into your library web page. So let's focus next on some A to Z list display related options. The first option that we'll look at allows you to set the number of records per page. So this is the maximum number of search results your users will see before they need to click on the next page. We do recommend that for performance this value be set to less than 100 records per page, and the default will be 20 records per page. Pagination links affect how your A to Z list search results are divided into pages. Maximum pagination links, as you see here, and pagination link character length are two settings that affect how your search results are divided. Now in this example, we have the maximum pagination links set to 5 links per page, and that's actually what we saw previously. Here's the first page, second page, third page, fourth page, and fifth page. Click on next set of titles, and then you'll see the next 5 pages. The pagination character length in this example is set to 3 characters. So in the user interface, this means again that we see 5 alphabetical divisions for pages with the option to see more by clicking on next set of titles, and then you'll notice that each division spans a section defined with 3-letter headers. So we'll see 3 letters, 3 letters, 3 letters, and so on. So that's the pagination character length. You can have the maximum pagination links set to more or less pages, and you can also change the pagination link character length as you desire. The default view defines how much information you want to show the user initially about their search results. So the table view shows a brief view, including just the title and the ISSN of the journal. And then the user can click on the I icon, the information icon, to show the rest of the information in a pop-up window. The detail view, as we saw earlier, shows all of the information. And so remember that the user is given the option to switch views on their own by using the Switch to Detail View or Switch to Table View link, but you can determine what the user sees by default when they first come to the A to Z list. So again, either the table view or the default view. Speaking of the switching views option, by default, the Switch to View link will display to users, so they can decide if they want to see more or less information on their own when they see the search results in the A to Z list. However, you do have the option to hide the Switch to Table View and Switch to Detail View links, so that users will only see the default view that you set. The next option is the default search, and here you can define the radio button that's selected by default. So either starts with, contains, or in the case of the locate tab, exact when you do a search. Notice that, again, the title tab only has 2 options, where the locate tab has an additional option of exact. So if you set exact as the default, it will default to exact on the locate tab, but on the title tab, it will actually default to starts with. So just to make a note of that. The default is actually contains. So when the user first comes to the A to Z list and looks at the title tab or the locate tab, the default will be, the contains option will be selected for them. But again, you can decide if you want a different option selected instead for the default. Then there's the starts with results option, and that controls how the starts with search behaves. So when the user, or when the starts with results form is set to browse, as we see in this case, the user conducts a starts with search, And they're dropped into an alphabetical list of your journals with their search term acting as the starting point. So you'll see here, here's the search term that they typed in, so this is the starting point, and then they can continue alphabetically through the list by clicking on the next button, for example. If starts with results is set to search, and this is all done behind the scenes, the setting of browse or search, the user is brought to a list of journals that start with that word. So this is a very targeted kind of search where the user is looking for the title astronomy. The only titles that display will start with the word astronomy. So we only have 9 e-journals in this particular search result list. There's also an option to enable an autocomplete feature for title searches in the A to Z list, and this is called Enable Ajax behind the scenes. So if I'm in a starts with search, I can start typing in a search term, and a list of possibilities appears below the search box, as we see in this example here. As I continue typing, it's automatically going to refine the list. So the autocomplete option can be turned on or off, as you wish. There's also an option of whether or not you want to include related object information in the A to Z list. So a little bit of background here. The SFX knowledge base has information about related objects. So for example, if a journal ceases publication and is continued by another journal, the 2 journals are considered related. Another example would be a journal and its supplements. So with this option turned on, so you do want to see related objects, your users can benefit from this information and then see related journals in the results list. So in this first example, we can see the various iterations of the Atlantic, and we can also see a supplement indicated here. If it's confusing or not useful to your users, then related object information can be hidden from the A to Z list. Now looking at the second example here, note that also you can decide if you want any related journals that don't have any active services to display in the A to Z list, if they're related to journals that do have active services. So in this example, for the Atlantic Monthly, we don't subscribe to this title. It's not hyperlinked, meaning that it's not activated in our SFX. But it's displayed here in the A to Z list because it is related to a title that is active in SFX. So you can decide if you want not active related titles to display in the A to Z list or not. The next option we'll take a look at is the ability to hide the citation linker tab. So we talked about the citation linker tab as being part of the standard A to Z list interface. If citation linker will not be useful to your users, you can choose to hide the citation linker tab altogether, so it won't display to users when they access the A to Z list. If you have MetaLib as well as SFX, you can decide whether or not you want to give your users the ability to push journal information from the SFX A to Z list to their MetaLib My eJournals list. Now if you do want that option, the MetaLib icon will appear next to the SFX swirly icon. So if users click on that MetaLib icon, it will push the journal information from SFX to their MetaLib My eJournals list. The last display-related option is whether you want a visual indicator to display to users if a title is peer-reviewed. So you can choose, first of all, not to have any visual indicator in the results list. Or if you do want a visual indicator, you can choose from an image that displays next to the title. So we'll see in this example, here's the image that appears next to the title here in the results list for the A to Z results. And so that image indicates that this is peer-reviewed. Or you can actually have it as text instead next to the title and the A to Z list results. Note that the peer review information will always appear when you click on the information button. You will always have the option to see that peer reviewed indicator there. Just to note that there are a few display-related changes that involve changing files directly on the server. So for example, the header image in the A to Z list, or colors or fonts that display in the A to Z list. More information on these kinds of server-related changes can be found in the Advanced Users Guide. And again, you'll want to refer to your Ex Libris SFX contract for specifically what types of changes can be made and how often changes can be requested. So we've been talking about display-related customizations for the A to Z list so far. Let's talk now about content that can be included in the A to Z list. You can decide which services you'd like to display or hide in the A to Z list menu. And you can also choose to exclude targets from that view. So here's a detailed view of a journal, and by default I see the full text services that display here. And I can see that both of the targets, that have this particular journal. Now if I wanted to exclude DOAJ from the A to Z list view, XLibris support can add that to your excluded target list. Now this won't deactivate the target itself, but it will still function and perform its link resolution duties, but it just won't be visible in the A to Z list. You can also decide to remove certain elements from the A to Z list view. So if, for example, they may be not useful to your users. Any of these items listed here can be removed from the A to Z list user interface. And also it will apply when you click on the information button and see the pop-up window. So for example, if categories are not useful to have displayed in the A to Z list, and also when you click on the information button, categories can be removed from the display. For A to Z list user interface languages, you can define the user interface language set. So this is the list of languages that will appear in the drop-down in the A to Z list. You'll notice that in the A to Z list user interface, the language options appear in their native languages. So we'll see that here. So if I choose to view the A to Z list in French, for instance, you'll notice that the language in the tabs is translated, so you'll see that. You'll see that some of the text below, some of the links are translated as well. But not all of the text is translated. And that's because some of the information in the search results is derived from the object, the target, and category names that are defined in the knowledge base. So these are not translated automatically. So notice the AC flyer. That information, that's an object coming from the SFX knowledge base, so that's not translated. The categories are not translated either. So just a note there. But the text labels and some of the fields here, the tabs across the top, those can all be translated. Also, you can select the default language for when a user first comes to the A to Z list. And in our example, actually we'll see here in this example here, English is our default language. You can also define one or more headers to show in the A to Z list. And headers, as we see here in this screenshot, are the letters that you can click on in the title tab to find titles starting with a particular letter. You can have one header, and actually we saw that here in our A to Z list. Let me actually go back to our A to Z list. And let's click on the title tab. So here we have just one header defined. Or, as in the screenshot, you can have multiple headers. And some examples of the types of headers are listed here. So, and you'll want to refer to the General User's Guide for more information on the types of headers that are available. But in this example, I have 3 headers. I've added the standard header, and that's represented here by the first header that you see. I've also included the small, what we call the small header. So we'll see that listed here. And then I've also included a Hebrew header. We've been talking through the customizations that are available for the A to Z eJournals list, but there are also customizations available for the eBook A to Z list. The good news is the customization options are actually very similar to the A to Z eJournal list customizations. And if you want to use actually the same customizations in both the eJournal and the eBook A to Z lists, once you have the eJournal customizations configured the way you want, it's very easy for XLibris to copy the eJournal list customizations to the eBook list as well. And that's if you would want the same customizations to apply to both the eJournal list and the eBook list. For eBooks, though, there are a couple of unique options that we'll cover here. One of these options is being able to display links between the eBook search and the A to Z eJournals end user interfaces. So the eJournals A to Z list and the eBook A to Z list are typically separate URLs, as we saw earlier. However, you can combine the two searches into one URL, as we see here. So they are still very separate searches on separate tabs, but both can be accessed from the same A to Z URL. The second unique option for the A to Z ebook list is you have the option to display book thumbnails in the ebook search results. The images can come from either Google Books or Amazon, your choice, based on ISBN. Another option you have with both the eJournal and the ebook A to Z lists is you can customize the wording for all of the text elements that appear in the A to Z lists. Now this can apply to one or more of the languages that you want to make available to your users. The example here shows just a very small portion of the labels that can be changed. So if you don't like what a particular field label is called, you can ask your Ex Libris project team or the support team to change it for you. So if you wanted to change, notice by default it's called the Title tab, but we can change this to Titles, for example, just to show you one change. Any of the tabs can be relabeled. This Find eJournal text can be relabeled as well. Title here in the title search field, that can be relabeled also. So lots of different options there. Just in terms of how long it will take to see any changes to your targets or objects in your knowledge base. So for example, if you activate a new target or a new object in your knowledge base, it will appear in the A to Z list after an A to Z list indexing job runs. This indexing job typically runs on a daily basis, and your Ex Libris SFX project team will be scheduling this job for you. Just be aware, though, that it may take a day or so before you see any updates in your A to Z list. For user interface customization changes, though, most of the changes that we covered in this session can actually be seen immediately in the A to Z list after they're made. So there are a few types of user interface customization changes that require indexing jobs, though, to run first before they display. So your Ex Libris project team or the support team will do these user interface changes on your behalf and will confirm when the changes are completed so you can view them. Again, most of the UI changes that we talked about today will display immediately, but a few of them will require indexing jobs to run first. And again, your support team will let you know when the changes are completed. So that covers possible configurations or customizations that you can make to the A to Z lists. But let's just briefly sum up some best practices. Defaults are good. It's okay to leave everything as its default and change only what drives you or your users crazy, as opposed to approaching each option as a decision that you have to make. Decide on the pagination or the number of records per page based on your own resources. There's no rule that's going to apply to everyone in every situation because your resources are unique. And then last but not least, keep your users in mind. When you're customizing your views and configuring how search behaves, you'll want to make sure that these are set up to be friendly to your users. If you support multiple languages, you'll want to make sure that SFX can do the same. So this brings us to the end of the session. So just to summarize briefly, we talked about customization options for the eJournal and ebook A to Z lists, and also some best practices for user interface customization of the A to Z lists. This is a list of documents that will provide more information on the A to Z list customizations, and all of these can be found in the Documentation Center. The General User's Guide will have more details on many of the A to Z list customizations that we talked about in this session. The ebook A to Z list has its own guide, the ebook search guide, and that will explain customizations that can be made to the ebook A to Z list. The Advanced User's Guide will have information on making A to Z list changes on the server. So the Ex Libris support team would be doing this on your behalf, so such as header changes, for instance, to be your institution's own logo. For the A to Z indexing job that I mentioned in this session, your Ex Libris project team will be setting up this job and scheduling it for you, but if you're interested in further information about the job, it can be found in the System Administration Guide. Thanks for joining me.